I don't have to do this. I don't have to do this. Those are the very powerful words of the amazing Molly Ruland, who I interviewed on this episode of the Try Life On podcast. Molly is an original DC native, and that's how we met each other some time ago. And the reason why I wanted to get her on the podcast is because she has executed what so many of us want to do, which is just stop what we are doing, stop the way that we are living, change our lifestyle. She's an incredible one. Molly was running a media company out of the Washington, D.C. area, brick-and-mortar. And when COVID happened, she recognized it, seized the opportunity, changed her lifestyle, changed her business model, and is now operating a fully integrated media company out of Costa Rica because she wanted to change her lifestyle during the COVID environment, when she visited a beach in North Carolina, she had an epiphany. It's like, I don't have to live this way anymore. I don't have to do this. Those are the words that Molly Ruland said. The other thing you should pay attention to during this interview is the fact that she talks about the greatest mistake in business is not knowing when to stop. The greatest mistake in business is not knowing when to stop. And she's right. So many people keep chasing money when a lot of us should be chasing lifestyle. And she had that recognition. And the one other thing that I want to call out when you listen to this amazing interview is she deals in the relationship business through podcasting. And we talk about how relationships are a stronger currency than money. Relationships are a stronger currency than money, especially in lifestyle design, because if you do know people who exist in New York, Denver, DC, Costa Rica, France, Australia, whatever, wherever this person may be, if you have a meaningful relationship with that person, they open doors for you that you could have never opened for yourself, right? So we talk about relationship as a currency. She does that through her podcasting business. She helps people do that all over the world. But what I want you to pay attention to is how her lifestyle shifted from brick and mortar, Washington, D.C., to totally integrated, totally virtual, generating 200% more than she was generating before while living a lifestyle she does not need vacation from. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to my dear, dear friend, Molly Ruland of HeartCast Media. Man, you can't be down in Costa Rica and just flaunting that view back there like that.
Isn't that the whole point, though?
Meanwhile, I'm in good old fucking DC with a virtual background.
Yeah, for like one day out of the year. The rest of it, you're like, God only knows where. I don't feel bad for you at all.
Oh, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, you make me smile. I haven't done, like, I'll do an intro for this thing later, but you make me smile because I know, I obviously know a fair amount of your story, like getting out of DC and all that type of stuff. And then seeing you do what you're doing with HeartCast Media, and then seeing you LinkedIn living a lot and on social, but more importantly, living your own best lifestyle. And that shit just makes me smile. So I'm happy to see you. I'm happy to see you. Introduce yourself for me.
Oh, man. So we're recording. We're
like, I just get right to it. I don't even think about it. Yeah.
All right. Okay, cool. Well, introduce myself. My name is Molly. I'm a stand-up comedian from New Jersey. Just kidding. That's my plan D. So let's see. I own a digital content agency. I've been in multimedia for 23 years. I supported community through art, music, and culture on a very local level. And now I have adjusted to provide my services to businesses, brands, people that have a message that are trying to expand that message, but also do it in a sustainable way. That's also effective.
Yeah, that's also effective. And that's HeartCast Media, right?
Yes, sir.
And you have, it has expanded. Like, so when I first met you, I'm gonna enjoy this one. So when I first met you, you were DC based. You had amazing, actually, I love that location that you had. I just can't remember the name of it, but you had that amazing podcast studio that I remember you were paying an inordinate amount of money for the lease and things of that nature.
Classic.
And DC. Yeah, classic DC, paying way too much money for stuff. and you were running your business out of that studio and from the house, etc. And your personal life journey just all of a sudden shifted. And I'm still curious what was the breaking point of it, but maybe you can just start there, because you are where today?
Well, I'm in Costa Rica. I'm on Lake Arenal, which is the biggest lake in Costa Rica, right on the volcano. I live here now, bought this house a year ago. So totally different life from DC. You know, I have like two people to credit. Tim Ferriss and Tom Bilyeu are the people that changed my life. And that happened before I met you, actually. I had a 3-story building across the street from the legendary Howard Theater. I don't think I met you at that point. I built a retail store on the first floor, a live music stage on the second floor, a podcast studio and a recording studio on the third floor, directly across from the Howard, right where they have that, like, that corner lot.
Yeah.
And so we recorded 86 bands in 11 months, and we did like all this stuff. And I was taking care of everybody, and I was managing 4 Airbnbs and cleaning them myself in order to pay the bills, right? Because people want to make a lot of assumptions about what you have and don't have. But I was working really hard to make that happen. And I was listening to an episode of Impact Theory or lots of them, but there was just one where, Tom Bilyeu constantly repeats, like, your greatest success comes after your greatest failure. And the biggest mistake you can make in business is not knowing when to stop. Right. And the combination of those two things. And I just remember I was sweeping the Airbnb to pay the bills. So all these adults next door who weren't contributing to this 3-story building, but were using it. Right. And I just stopped and I said, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to do this anymore. And it was just like that. It was this light went off, and I did a full 180 on my life. I like to joke that I Marie Kondo'd and Oprah'd my life. I got rid of everything that wasn't bringing me joy. Right. I thought about really what brought me joy. What part of creating content do I like? I'm an artist. I like being behind the camera. I like designing. I like strategy. I love all that stuff. Right. And what did I not like? Well, it was really working with artists is when it, boiled down to. So I decided to create a different life and a different company for myself. And then the Oprah part was, it's kind of reverse Oprah, but I just realized I'm not responsible for anybody. And I got rid of everybody. I threw people that were living out of my house. In my house out. I closed the company. I let go of a whole bunch of people. I said, I'm not responsible for anybody, And that was when my life really began, because at that point I was living for everybody else. I was living to make sure other people heard this artist music. I was making sure everybody was hungry, and nobody ever asked me if I was hungry. Not once. Not once. And the people saw me deteriorating before their eyes, and no one said a word.
But that's the grind, right? There's this sexiness to the grind, if you will. I think some people are addicted to it, or some people just don't have awareness that they are squarely in the situation that you were in. In a lot of cases, some of my situations were like that too, where we are just operating. You don't even realize you're operating. You're just operating.
Doing it.
And what you said was super powerful. I don't have to do this. I think that's what meant, I think that's what so many people need to say that are stuck in the W-2 or stuck. There ain't nothing wrong with the W-2. I don't crap on the W-2. I leveraged it really well. But there are some people who are just operating in that thing. They don't want to be there, but they have the power to say, I don't want to do this anymore, and make change. But where they struggle, and I'm curious your perspective, is once you have that awareness, because you clearly got to a point where you had that awareness, how did you jump? Where did you know? How did you know where to go? What to do? Who did you rely on? It's hard to make that move.
It wasn't. At the time, it wasn't hard to close it down, even though it was a company I ran for 19 years, right? So
it was 19 years, damn.
19 years, but I was still like, I was ready. I was ready to close it down. And I formed the business with a friend of mine who has like the MBA and the operations, whatever, project management certifications, all that, right? I was like the gritty, get it done. I'm an artist. I'm gonna make it dope. I know how to connect people. I have connections everywhere. That was my, intellectual property, if you will. Understand marketing, understand branding. We formed the business. We were 7 weeks in, and she left. She said, I can't do this. And, everybody wants to be in a startup until you're in a startup and you're like, oh, that means working 80 hours a week. Like, this sucks.
It's
This is
just
not
you.
sexy at all, man. This sucks. Right. So, she didn't last. And I panicked because I truly believe that I couldn't do it without her, because my last business was wildly popular, but it was not successful because it was not sustainable.
It wasn't
And if something
sustainable.
is not sustainable, it will never be successful. And I was pushing a boulder up a massive mountain, and the second I slowed down, it was going to roll back on me. So it didn't matter that thousands of people in DC knew who we were. I've like ran for some office. 19,000 people voted for me, for crying out loud.
Wow.
Right? Just off of name recognition alone from all the stuff I did. Didn't mean I was good at business. Didn't mean I was making revenue. Didn't mean anything other than everybody knew me. Right. So, I really felt like I needed her, and she bailed. And I thought, well, shoot, man, I better figure this out. And so I became a student of business, and I began my journey by reading The 4-Hour Workweek.
Holy shit. We have that in common.
Yeah, I think actually I was thinking about that before I got on here. I can't remember if you were the one that suggested it or if I read it right when I met you, but it was like right at that time.
I must have been talking about it with you at some point. For me, that was, I found that book. I credit that book with my mindset relative to structured lifestyle design. I was doing some of those things before, but just in an organic way. Like, I didn't know why I felt this way about mobility and freedom and virtualizing my shit and being a minimalist. And I don't want a new car every 5 years to have to pay for that thing. And thank God I found Tim Ferriss. And you know what? People get him all confused. It's not that the brother's talking about, I just want to work 4 hours a week. No, he's talking about how you optimize your life so you can actually have a life worth living and systematize and automate things and get minimalist and what have you. But all right, so you read that book, you got the awareness, but where is the point to, like, where do you get the support to make the decisions that you made?
Well, I had already formed the company. I was already all in, and I used my relationships in DC, and I got a studio. We had a studio in the Washington Post building before I met you, which was like a big deal and also an exorbitant amount of money. And then she was gone. And so I was like, well, I'm already out on the plank. I either better learn how to dive and swim, or I don't even know what the alternative is. So I became a student of business, and I read every book I can. I read this one book called Sacred Success by Barbara Stanny. She's the H&R Block. She's the daughter of either H or R. I can't remember, so, whatever.
Okay.
And she married some douchebag, and he took all her money, and she was afraid of money. And it's a real journey on like, as a woman understanding things. But in that book, it said the average human, and everybody's heard this at this point, has 70,000 thoughts a day, and more than half of them are negative. More than half of them are thoughts you've already had. And that just like really triggered me. And I was like, well, I'm going to fill my head with other thoughts. And that was like what started the journey. And then the 4-Hour work week was probably the second or third or fourth book I read. And then from there, I became a voracious reader. I've probably read 135 books now in the last 4 years. Wow. And I only read business development books and some personal development books. And then that teetered into leadership. And so I just focus on the areas that I knew the least about. I know branding, I know marketing, I know strategy, I know people, I know design. I do not know, a lot of other things. And so that's what I focused on. And everything I didn't know, I learned. And then I implemented it in my business. And it started to work. And then the pandemic hit.
Oh.
So I was like a year into the business when the great panini hit. And I had a brick and mortar. I mean, you got to soften it up somehow. I had a brick and mortar. That's where you came and saw me at the HeartCast House, which is a castle mansion, historic, super cool building right in the heart of DC. And the pandemic hit. And I'm not a very intelligent person, but I understand history a little bit more than to know that the pandemic wasn't going to last a couple of weeks. And so I cut my losses immediately, and I closed the lease on my house, and I closed the lease on my business.
You closed lease on both your house and the business right away?
In April.
April 2020.
April 2020. Everybody thought I was nuts. They said, no, it's going to be a couple of weeks. Remember, everybody's wearing space suits.
Yeah,
going to
I
Costco,
remember.
right?
I remember, yeah.
I was like, no, man, y'all need to read more books. This is not how pandemic works. It's not going to be a couple of weeks. I'm not going to pay $5K a month and $4K a month for these spaces right? Because I had an Airbnb unit in the basement of my house. It was paying for that. That disappeared in 24
Yeah,
hours.
no one came around no more.
And then a 5K lease, right? And, the mayor said, stay at home. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell my clients to defy the mayor to record a podcast. Like,
right.
bro, let's keep it in perspective here. And
Right.
so I closed it and I moved to the beach for a month and I spent a month barefoot. And I remembered that I am actually a child of like the dirt. Like I can live in a city, but I like going camping, and I like being outside, and I like gardening, and I like being barefoot. And I remembered all that, and I grounded myself. And then I just said, I'm going to do this better than everybody else remotely, because business still needs to happen. And we produce podcasts that drive revenue and create strategic relationships. It's about business development, period. Forging relationships with people who will make you more money this year, right? It's very specific. That need only increased in the pandemic because there was no more conventions, there was no more networking meetings, there were no more fancy dinners, there was none of that. And so I grew the business 200%.
Oh my God, you recognize the opportunity in the Great Panini, as you say. You recognize that there was an opportunity if you shifted your business model a bit.
So everybody was like, pivot. And I'm like, no, man, I'm not pivoting. Like slow down. Like people still need our business. So I'm going to do it remotely. I'm going to meet people where they're at. I didn't change what we did. I just changed how we did it. And then I made sure to get better than everybody else. I figured out the back end of Zoom to make it sound not like crap before anybody else was paying attention to that stuff. You know what I mean? I've been telling you to buy a microphone for how many years now? Like,
many years. I finally got
right.
it.
So like, you know what I mean? I just figured, hey, we still need to do this. And so what's happened is the business has grown exponentially. Our clients are literally all over the world. I have clients in Belgium and the UK, New Zealand, Australia. I mean, it's awesome.
I want to highlight something. That's the marketplace. The listenership of this, I don't know everybody who listens to the podcast, but a lot of people who listen to the podcast are in traditional careers. The reason why they're listening to the podcast is because they know that I'm going to get people who think a little bit different about life. I love career. I had many careers, right? Sure. But where people struggle is the pivot and the jump. And what you just said, which I wanted to highlight, was, look, the Great Panini hit. You were doing a brick and mortar business. You saw an opportunity. But what I really love is that you saw an opportunity for a new lifestyle. You remember that you were a child of the dirt. Adults, when I coach people on lifestyle design, the first thing we do is we write down our dream day in vivid detail, because adults forgot how to dream. It's almost like I say it all the time. We were dreamers when we were kindergartens and first grade and stuff, throwing paint on the wall and eating glue and children of the dirt. I was in the woods in my Randolph, Massachusetts, lighting sticks on fire. I don't know why I did that shit, but I did it.
Me too.
But we get so responsible and we just start operating and executing. But I wanted to highlight the fact that you just said, for people who are listening, you were doing a brick and mortar business. You felt something. You didn't pivot, you shifted. And then you took an opportunity to adjust your lifestyle. And I'm hoping you can talk about where you are, how you adjusted your lifestyle, and how that lifestyle is complementary with your business.
For sure. I'll never forget. When I was at the beach in North Carolina, when I rented an Airbnb.
I remember when you did that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And we weren't even allowed to rent Airbnbs, but I had been a super host for 7 years. So I convinced some lady to let me rent on the low. Right. Cause at that point, everything was shut down, even vacation rentals, if you remember. And I was walking down the beach with my dog, my little, 19-year-old dog, Lily. And I was like, Lily, how cool. Talking to my dog alone. I'm cool with that. And I was like, Lily, how cool is this? I was like, man, imagine if this was our life. And then I just stopped dead in my tracks. And I literally looked at my dog and I was like, this could totally be our life.
If this was
wait
a
minute. We don't need to pretend if this could be our life. It's North Carolina. The bar's not that high. If I can't get here, fuck, I can't get anywhere. Right. So, and that was just that light bulb moment. And so I started working, Costa Rica was going to be a 10-year plan. But then what happened was as things started to evolve and the business started to grow, I realized, and then the Panini hit, and it was like, well, wait a minute. I don't need to wait 10 years to figure out how to make remote income, right? Because that was always the plan, but I couldn't even fathom how I was going to go from a brick and mortar. I had a
Mhm.
physical location where people had to come into my store in order, my space to pay me. So it felt very like, how am I going to go from brick and mortar to virtual? Right.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then the pandemic hit and it happened for me. And so
Mhm.
then all of a sudden I was like, well, wait a minute, what else is possible?
Mhm.
And my staff is global,
Mhm.
Vietnam, Philippines, we're all over the world. And so I thought, well, if they can be global, then why can't I? And
Mhm.
so in January of 2021, I just said, I'm doing it because two big reasons.
Mhm.
Number two is to get my clients used to it so they don't freak out and I can just prove I can do this. But number one, what if I don't like Costa Rica? What if I wait 10 years for this plan and then I
Right.
get there and I'm like, oh shit, this sucks.
Right.
I don't
Yep.
want to live here at all, right? I need my Amazon. Whatever the, whatever it is. And so I thought, well, let me go figure this out now, because if I've learned anything in the last 3 years is that nothing is promised. We're all
Yeah.
gonna die, some of us
Yep.
sooner than later,
Yep.
unfortunately.
Yep.
It's
And
very
I'm gonna that. So I got these principles with my coaching students. It's a long sheet of principles based on everything that based on my journey and people like you. I pay attention, I listen, especially on my coaching students, I can see threads. And one of the principles is you can try life on at any time. It's a fucking choice. You did it when you were walking on the beach and having that conversation with a little puppy and was like, what if our life is like this? Well, what if our life is like this? You
Why
can
can't
literally
it be?
choose. And I'm going to parallel something. I wanted a new lifestyle. I decided to go try being a police officer. I didn't know if I was going to like being a police officer when I did that whole thing. And there I was 15 years later, still being a street cop while I was being an exec, which is, when I think about that shit nowadays, Molly, it makes my head hurt. Like
You
how
welcome
I
to the
pulled that off.
club.
It's weird. But the premise I'm going to call out is you can practice life. You can go somewhere that you want to be. You can do something that you want to do. People think that the shift of lifestyle or the shift of career or starting a business is some destination that you get there and you're happy. No, you have to work on it. So the fact that I live between DC and the Mediterranean now, I've been practicing it for 6 years now.
Right, right.
People feel like, damn, you're all over the place. You're on vacation. First of all, it
No.
ain't fucking vacation.
Yeah, it's
It's my
even
it's
more
my
work.
it's my lifestyle. And
Right.
secondly, the reason I do it so fluidly is just because I've been practicing it for so long. So my standard of living changed to something totally different. Some people take the metro and eat Subway sandwich for lunch every day. You live by a freaking volcano in one of the most beautiful countries in the world, running a massive business, impact massive business. It's amazing. And it just gives me goosebumps. But I just wanted to highlight that principle of trying life on. So you went down, you started or rejiggered the business, got everything going. I mean, it wasn't perfect when you got started, right?
No, not
Living
at
down
all.
there and all that. Oh, you
Well,
had an issue with your house.
I did. I was drugged and robbed in a home invasion 3 weeks after moving to Costa
Oh
Rica.
my
So
God.
yeah, it was a little rocky, but you know, an interesting tie-in is, and I see it a lot with people moving here, right? They want
Yeah.
everything to be perfect. Like I see on the groups all the time, people are like, we're having a house built. Can anybody recommend Wi-Fi? I want to have it installed before I get there. I'm like, first of all, half of the stuff that you bought for your house has already been stolen. Your house probably isn't being built. Like this idea of like ready on arrival, right? It's this it's
Ready on arrival.
consumerism. It's not really our fault, right? It's
Yeah.
like everything has to be perfect. Like, oh, I'm moving this weekend, so I'm gonna Amazon order everything and it'll show up on Saturday and I'll have it all. Well, the thing about Costa Rica is you can't do that. Like I wanted to buy a little lamp that was under a foot tall. It took me 7 months. 7 months to find a little lamp,
Mm.
right? Nothing happens fast. And so if you want to make a change and you want to know that you're going to have your salary is going to be lined up and your spouse is going to be cool with it and nothing's going to change and it's all going to be perfect and you're going to have the right car and the right shoes and all this, it's never going to
It don't
happen
work
that
that
way.
way.
It's not going to happen. You got to try life on. Just like you said, it's a perfect analogy because it's like, well, you don't have to give all that up. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just go do the thing. Go do it on the weekends. Give it a shot, A few years ago, I was at Union Station of all places, and they had one of those kiosks where you can get a shirt made. And so
Yeah.
I walked up to this very timid girl running the booth. I said, "This might be uncomfortable for you, but can you make me a shirt?" And she says, "Yeah." And what do you want it to say? And I had her put on the back, "Quit your fucking job," right? And I would wear that all over the place. I've been telling people to quit their fucking job for like 10 years. Has been my like second motto in life, right? Because the thing is, when you're an adult, you don't have to play the clarinet anymore, dude. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? You don't
Right.
have to do it anymore. It
Yep.
doesn't mean that the trombone is better, but if you hate the clarinet, then stop playing it. You know what I mean? Like your mom can't force you to do stuff you don't want to do anymore. It's only you. And that doesn't mean that you're, maybe you have a sick child, or I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's a smooth, seamless, easy transition to go from one thing to another, but it's also not impossible if it's what you really want. But I think the hardest thing is finding out what you really want, not actually getting it. And I don't think people think about that enough.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I will back you up by saying it is hard for people. I have that propensity, so it tends to be natural with me. You're a jumper, I'm a jumper. We can go do shit. But for people who've gone through 20 to 30 years of formal education, and then peers, coworkers, neighbors, and even family members are telling them what success looks like, what you are supposed to be, the way you're supposed to live, how you're supposed to look. Your hair is supposed to be this way. You're supposed to have 2.5 kids, white picket fence, and a dog. Right. That's what we do in this family. You're supposed to be a nurse because your brother was a nurse, your cousin was a nurse. Right. People have really, really succumbed to, I don't want to call it societal pressure. It's just what they know in their programming and what they've seen. It's hard. It is really hard for people. And I get it. Because it's very easy for folks like you and I to be like, yo, just quit your shit, quit your job. It's easy. No, it's not easy. But I will go back to your statement. I wrote it down here. You don't have to do this. You don't have to play the clarinet no more if you don't want to. I don't want to be a police officer anymore. I'm done. I fulfilled that itch though, like a son of a gun, but I couldn't possibly go back. So I stopped and I moved on to something different. Oh, I love what you do.
Well, I feel like I have an interesting advantage, and I think it's a good opportunity to talk about perspective, right? When I was born, I was told I wouldn't live more than 20 years and I wouldn't be more than taller than a 5-year-old. So I looked like a 5-year-old by the time I was 2. I was going to go really fast. It's up in the air, but I think it was my dad's exposure to different chemicals in Vietnam, I think is the short answer. So it's like a rare congenital birth defect. Only one other documented case, died by the time she was 12. Right. And so they said, you're going to look like a 5-year-old by the time you're 2. And that's it. So I grew really fast. I looked like a 5-year-old by the time I was 2, but I didn't stop growing. I just kept growing. So I've been 5'10" since 4th grade. And so what's happened is I've had a bunch of spinal surgeries. I had my first surgery at 19. I left home at 17. I had my first spinal surgery at 19, then 31, and then 33. And so what's happened to me in my life, because I didn't have the familial support and I didn't have anybody taking care of me, I had to reinvent myself constantly because when I had the lower back surgery when I was 19, I couldn't even put my own socks on for 6 months. I couldn't, so I was at the Washington Business Journal and circulation sales. And then I was in real estate finance for 13. And I did anything I could to survive because I didn't have anybody taking care of me. And so what I've done is I've worn all these hats. I could write a book. The stories I could tell you in my life, most people wouldn't even believe, because I left home at 17 and had these massively catastrophic, painful things happen in my life. But like, guess what? The sun still gets up every day with or without me. And I still got to feed myself, and the rent ain't going to pay itself. And I got stuff to do, man. So you got to figure it out. And so I've gotten the reps in, I'm grateful for the pain that I live in, because it gives me an incredible perspective and it makes me feel connected to everybody on the planet. But it also showed me that you can reinvent yourself a whole bunch of times. Do I have a massive savings account? No. Do I have an incredible tapestry of the history of my life? Oh my God. Right? I mean, for a year, I was like a secret shopper for hotels, resorts, and casinos, and traveled under fake names. And so, I mean, I know, like, I could tell you stories on stories. I was in Mike Tyson's skybox, at the All-Star game, DC 2001. Like, I could tell stories about my life that people honestly wouldn't believe. So I understand that you actually can reinvent yourself anytime you want. And even if you are a data scientist, you can be something else if you have that calling. Right.
People are afraid to, like, we climb a mountain. I tell people this all the time. It's okay. Like, if you climb a mountain, get to the top of your business, or whatever the relative top of your business is, it is okay. Matter of fact, it's very human to come back down and climb something else, or maybe just get better 2.0 version of yourself. But you've done so many different things that have filled your life book. And that's why I feel like your life is so rich. Not to mention the rich greenery behind you, which I'm still pissed off about. You know what I mean?
And it's not about like accolades. Like if I was to put it on a resume, I don't know if anybody would hire me. They'd be like, "What the hell you been doing with your whole life?" But that's why I own my own company, because they'd be like, "What's with this gap?" I'm like, "Well, there wasn't a gap, but." I'm not good on paper, but my life has been amazing. I know so many creative, amazing, talented, wonderful people throughout the world, right? And it was uncomfortable and it was painful and it's been sad and lonely and depressing. I got robbed. I got drugged and robbed in a home invasion. And as soon as I arrived here, right? It doesn't mean it was easy. It's not Instagram, but I made the decision because I moved from a neighborhood where it was common to hear 15 rounds unloaded in my front yard at 3 a.m. with zero explanation. So like I'll take this trauma. Give me some new trauma. Give me a new flavor of trauma.
There's going to be problems everywhere. But you made a decision.
Wherever you are. It's just different types of problems,
Can you are someone who is in the best position to explain the power of podcasting relative to building meaningful relationships around the world with people, and how much value and richness and vibrancy it brings to life just because it connects people. Can you talk, like, I think people listen to podcasts for information, but they don't realize the undercurrent thread of what's actually happening through podcasts, right? Like I get to see you today, which is
exactly
like shit. And now I'm like, I'm going to Costa Rica.
I know you've been saying that.
I know. Sure. Can you talk about that a little bit and give people a little bit of insight on what you are helping people do and what it's doing for you?
Oh, absolutely. Everything in life is about relationships, right? The older I get, the more time I spend thinking about it. Everything in life is based on the quality of your relationships, your personal life, your professional life. The best way to do business with the people that you have connections with is by going on a bunch of podcasts and forging relationships. So there's two sides to that coin, right? I happen to have a coin kind of in my hand. You got the podcast guesting side, where you can go on a bunch of other people's podcasts, tap into their network, tap into their audience, gain some new fans. It's a cheat code. Great if you're a coach, an author, or you have a new product, something you really want to talk about. Great publicity, definitely better, kind of like a modern day book tour. Podcast guesting is replacing PR companies in a lot of ways because, it could be cheaper and a little bit more maintainable to, go on podcasts versus paying a ton of money for PR. And you're like, am I even getting anything? Right. But it's all about the relationship, right? I'm sure people who have been on your podcast are going to end up hiring you, or vice versa, or they're going to send you business, or they're going to refer somebody. That's just how it works. You have a connection with somebody, you bond. Even if it's like, I've been going on a lot of podcasts. I'm sure I'll see a bunch of those people at the next podcast convention. And then even if it only means having a gin and tonic with them at the bar, that has value to me because people are my entire world, right? But chances are the ones that I hit it off enough with to have a gin and tonic with at the bar someday are also going to throw me some business when 100%. It is appropriate. It might be a year, it might be a week, right? But they're going to think of me because they like me, and vice versa. At HeartCast, we offer podcast booking. We have 2 million downloads. We can get you booked on Tom Bill you all the way down to like podcasts you never heard of, right? The flip side to that coin is podcasting as a business development tool where you are the host of the podcast, but we take it a different method. So we have a very specific strategy as far as branded podcasting for business development. So instead of worrying about the audience, you're more focused on the guest. So you don't care if you get 5 downloads or 5,000 because what you're doing is actually forging a relationship. So like if I really wanted you to become a client of mine, I could identify 12 people, you included, and I could have you on my podcast, and I would do this intro that's like, Maurice Philogene has done this and that and this and that. And you're going to sit in there going, oh my God, no one's ever introduced me this way. And then I'm going to show up. I'm going to make you look super smart. I'm going to highlight your work. I'm going to have an impassioned, intelligent conversation about it. You're going to leave going, man, Molly's awesome, man. She's cool. I like her. Well, now gift of reciprocity, like Alex likes to talk about, you're going to be inclined to want to do something for me. So I'm going to email you the next week. Hey, man, It was so nice having you on the show. I would love to
Exactly.
work with you, or if you have anybody you want to refer to me, man, I'll hook you up, whatever your shtick is. But if you don't create that runway, that is so much more effective than going to conventions and cold emailing people and stuff like that. But you got to do it right.
You have to do it.
And 12 podcast episodes can be more beneficial to your ROI and your bottom line than 127 of them. And that's just the reality. But it depends on your goal. And that's the first question we ask. What is the goal? Right. I have a podcast right now, and I'm going on podcasts because I want to get in front of as many people as possible, because I know I get business when I get in front of people. They listen to me and they go, man, she's crazy. I want to work with her. Right. And that's how I get my clients.
It's your presence. I'm just giving you some feedback. Your presence, your voice, your energy is like unavoidable. It's unavoidable. Like I see you
on my dating profile. I'm unavoidable.
It's true though. It's true though. Like that's why I wanted you to comment on that, because what I'm finding, even like starting this podcast, and you gave me a bunch of great advice that I've followed and stuff. I am meeting people. I am not alone in my weird journey, in my life book thing. I'm meeting people. Like I just got off another conversation with a guy who's in Mexico, someone who's in Singapore, someone who's in New York City, doing amazing things, right? And I just got invited to speak at a massive conference in New York City because of this person.
That's amazing.
You just connect with people. And I don't think people realize people listen to podcasts, but they don't realize what podcasts are actually doing. It's connecting people in such a unique way.
It's like business dating. You know,
well, it can be business dating, life dating.
Yeah, it's like being at a bar and overhearing like somebody's awkward Tinder date conversation. You know what I mean? That's kind of what listening to a podcast is. You're like listening to two people forge a relationship and find common ground and find things to provide value to the people that are listening, and being aware, actively listening to one another. Man, there's such a tremendous amount of respect that happens between two people on a podcast recording. My phone is on silent. I don't care if my house isn't burning down. I ain't messing with it right now. I'm actively listening to you. I want to provide value. There's a lot of really good stuff happening right now, and that carries on into your next sales call or the next thing that you do. And so it really matters, right? And I think we live in this society where it's like more, 1 million downloads. No, I mean, first of all, you ain't need 1 million downloads. If you got 1 million views on something today, you couldn't handle 100 new clients tomorrow. You don't actually want that to happen. Do not be fooled by TikTok and Instagram and all that. How many clients, right? It starts with knowing your numbers. How many clients do you need to live a bountiful life?
That's it. Reverse engineer it. That's
15, 100. Well, if you only need 10, why do you give a shit about being on Instagram and TikTok at all? Right? You should that's not the metric. The metric is the relationships in your life, period. It's not how many there are. It's the quality of them.
It's the quality of them. And in coaching, I tell people, or we talk about the fact that relationships are a stronger currency than money. They are. It's one of the reasons I have shied away from doing group coaching for the lifestyle design stuff that I do, because I want the deep relationship with the person that I'm spending time with and getting to know them. And like one coaching student, we're now doing a real estate deal together, which is awesome, but we connected as people. There's just so much going on in this medium. When you, like, how are you doing it? Can you just talk about just real quick, your business model for working remotely, and how you have people in different places? Because there are people who are listening who are trying to start something in a virtual fashion and just don't know how they exist. So my virtual business, from a coaching perspective, just solopreneur, and then I have someone who does a website. But you are running podcasting platforms for people and helping them with a ton of stuff. But how are you doing it? How are you organized?
Well, I've built a lot of great systems. I'm a systems automations junkie. So the first thing I did when I built HeartCast Media is I spent this first 6-7 months building all the systems, Trello boards, Acuity, Slack, all of it, right? Lots of integrations, lots of automations, all of that. So every client has its own Trello board. So everything is really organized. Everything's in one place. When somebody orders something from us online, like books an episode, all the information goes straight to the team. Like there's no bottleneck. Like I took all the things I learned in these books, like don't be the bottleneck in your business. Make sure everything doesn't go through you. Cool. Well, if you book with us, all that information goes to a board and the entire team gets a notification. And so nobody on my team is going to say, what's the branding colors or what's the font? Bro, it's on the card. Look, everybody knows that, right? So eliminating like the bottlenecks was the first thing. I mean, number one, stop invoicing people. You can't afford to invoice anybody. You need to get paid up front and you need to have all your forms and everything attached. So everybody gets fooled by Dubsado and I need this and I need contracts. I've been doing business with Department of Health, Department of Defense, the DC mayor. I don't have a contract. I don't send people contracts. I send them booking links and invoices. You don't need all that stuff. It's just roadblocks in between you and making money. One of the biggest things I learned reading all those books is take the straightest path to the money. And as women, we don't do that. We're like, create a Facebook community. First of all, stop abusing the word community. You're putting people in a group to sell to them. That's not a community. That's a fucking scam. Okay, so like let's call a spade a spade first. And that's not the straightest path to the money.
Customers.
Why are you giving a bunch of free stuff to 5,000 people when you could just sell your shit for 5,000 to the person who actually wants it? Like, take the straightest path to the money. So eliminating repetition, eliminating any overwhelm. Don't send invoices. It's bad money juju. Like, if you want to work with me, click this link, put your credit card in, and once I've been paid, then I will start to work. I am not sending you an invoice. It's bad juju, man. I should never have to ask you to get paid. That's not the world we live in, right? I'm not doing 50% up front and then another one because that costs me money. So it's like, number one, know your numbers. How much do things cost? What is your hourly rate? That ties into knowing your numbers. Then you can't devalue yourself if you know how much things actually cost. And then never discount and never invoice. Those are my top 5 recommendations for anybody trying to get into business, right?
That's amazing.
Offer a bonus, not a discount, right? Alex Hermosi, right? You like, I can't even take credit for that, but the not invoicing thing, I will scream that from the top of the mountains until I die. That is an outdated method. 50% now. Every time you touch file, you lose money. So if I got to send you an email and I say, Maurice, I'd like you to hire me for this thing. And you say, okay. And then I say, okay, here's a contract for you to sign. Okay. Now here's a payment, here, you can mail me a check. Okay. Now that that's been started, now you can fill out this form. Okay. Listen, my hourly rate's like, we'll call it $300 an hour. Every time I send an email, that's $25. I'm just spitballing here.
Right.
Okay? That just cost me $200
costs you money.
Up with you for some dumb shit when I could have just sent you a link in the first place. You could have paid for it because at the end of the day, you don't care. You don't care.
That's it.
I'm gonna create more work for you too, right? Why am I creating all these barriers for entry for you just to pay me? It's really not that serious. I had a client recently, 5K website. She said, can we do 50 up front, 50 when we're done? That's what we're used to doing. I said, no, I'm too small of a shop. She said, okay.
Right. You get right to the point of it.
I'm too small of a shop. I don't have an AR department or accounts receivable department. It's me. I'm going to be the one that has to send that second invoice and send it to you and then follow up with you. You're costing me money. No, just pay it up front. What do you care? You think I'm going to hold your website hostage? That shit is outdated anyway.
Right.
Like, you got a money back guarantee. If you don't like it, I'll give you all $5,000 back. But for me to move, you got to pay me. And that's years of working with artists and not getting paid and getting screwed over. And now I'm like, sorry, I don't move unless you pay me. Guess what? Universities pay me. The government pays me. People will pay me in advance.
I love it. Y'all getting business tips. Where are your employees? How'd you get them?
That one is onlinejobs.ph. And so that was an inspiration from the 4-Hour Workweek. He recommended something, and then I got on Google and I found that it's a database of Filipinos. It's gotten like kind of really big and everybody's on there now, but you pay $99. You can put up a job posting and people will apply. My best advice is hire people full-time, pay them living wages. Like, if you're looking for somebody part-time and you want them to do your social media and edit your podcast and update your website and write your, that person doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying? That person does not exist. So isolate and identify the person that would make you the most money to hire. So for me, it was a video editor. That was okay. I can definitely sell my services with a video editor. That was an easy hire, right? So start with the most important one, pay people a living wage, because if you pay somebody part-time, then they got to find the rest of that money someplace else. So guess whose work is getting pushed to the bottom of the priority pile? Right. Yours, right. And you're keeping them active, and I don't think people pay people. Pay them. And not only that, they're building corporate knowledge with you. They're getting better over time, but you got to give them a living wage to do that from Jump Street. I don't like what people are doing. Like, no, I'm going to give you 5 hours for the week.
No, because now this person has to cobble 38 jobs together to live. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
And when you factor in that, like, you for $800 a month, you could get like a Filipino woman with a fucking MBA.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so it's like,
The
why are
skill
you
set's
being cheap?
incredible.
This is
Yep.
not the time to be cheap. How much did you spend on coffee last month, dude? You know what I mean? You could get a like this is not the time. Like, pay people a living wage. That's like a human rights issue, really, you know.
Yep.
But you can get fantastic people on a global scale. So there's some of us are like US based, some I'm Costa Rica based, some Philippines, Vietnam. We're kind of all over the world. I love it. All of
Mhm.
my employees that have started with me are still with me 3 years later. I love the time difference. I flex that. You know, I give them work to do. I wake up in the morning, it's done.
And it's
People think that
done.
they're behind. No, you got to
Yeah,
get
there's a
ahead,
time,
man.
arbitrage that people can
Yeah,
actually benefit from by doing work that way. It's a
because
beauty.
they want to send the tasks in the morning. No, you send them at night. Before you log out, you load
You
them
send
up.
them, yes, so they work on them and they're ready by the time you come back to work.
If you send it to them, that's like your boss emailing you something to do in the middle of the night. Okay, I'll do it tomorrow morning. Like, your morning is their night. So you gotta. So every Sunday night, I'm at my computer, and every night before I log out, I make sure that everybody's got their tasks. And then when I wake up, I look like the hero with my clients. And I'm like, all 17 things you asked us to do on the website are done.
I love it. And so that rhythm of you knowing how to send work to them, like I keep expressing to people that life and business are things to be practiced. You get better at it over time. But I just want to highlight a couple of things, and then I have a final ask of you. I want to highlight you did have brick and mortar. You have switched to this lifestyle where you are running a virtual business, a very effective one. I don't care. I love what you said about, look, find the one person who's going to pay you 5,000, or excuse me, find the one person who's going to pay you 5,000 instead of dealing with 5,000 people who are going to pay you $1. It makes zero sense, but you're targeting your people. It's integrating with this new lifestyle that you chose for yourself. It wasn't easy, but you did say at some point, I don't have to do this, and you acted on it. And I love people who do that, but I also want people who are stuck to recognize other people are unstucking themselves. It's time for other people to do that. So in the spirit of that, I guess my final question to you would be, what could you say to someone who's trying, what advice could you give to someone who wants to try life on their way, but they are stuck right now and not knowing what to do or having the motivation to do it?
I would say get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That's the number one thing. And just give it a shot, just give it a shot. I know that sounds crazy, but you just got to do it. And it doesn't have to be permanent, and like, people come to Costa Rica and they're like, oh, I'm going to come buy a house. I'm like, live here for a year.
Yeah, try it. Yeah.
Try it out. Like, simmer down, biscuit. Don't go buying a house, man. That feels a little extreme. You've never even been here. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta, like, everything doesn't have to be perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just see, and that's kind of why I came here. I was like, wait a minute, what if I don't like it? What if I build this dream and then I get here and I don't like it? So it's testing and retesting. I have this friend, Marianne Lombardi. She's a business launch coach. And she said something to me recently that really just shook me, and it stuck with me. She said, it's not failing and success, it's testing and retesting. And I thought, God,
I love that.
that's such a good shift, because you got to test things, man. It's not a failure. If you move someplace, you don't like it, you change your job, you don't like it. You can also not like stuff. That's totally okay, by the way. You're allowed to not like stuff, right? You're allowed to go, oh shit. Turns out I hate scuba diving, right? Whatever the thing is, but you just gotta kind of put yourself out there and just give it a little taste, and see what happens, because nothing is perfect, right? But there's all these unintended benefits that happen when you start listening to yourself and like putting value into what you want and not thinking about, and I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I'm legally disabled. I'm a single woman. I moved to a foreign country by myself with pre-existing health conditions. Am I going to focus on that? Absolutely not. Because if I lived my life, by the way, I was supposed to die, right? By the time I was 20, had a team of doctors at Bethesda Naval, #1 military hospital in the country, said I was going to be dead by 20.
That's insane. Now, if you hear that, for people who are listening, and people always talk about, oh, it's too difficult. Really? I don't know. Or I'm a woman, I can't. Really? I don't know. You can't be a senior executive and police officer at the same time. Really? I don't know. I don't know. I love what you're doing. HeartCast Media. I'm sure there are people who are going to listen to this and now want to get into the podcast racket, or they are in the podcast racket. Maybe just express what you do for them and then how they can find you, and then we can wrap up that way.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
HeartCastmedia.com, our website. It's nice and beautiful. Been putting a lot of work into that per usual. We do podcast production, booking, audiobooks, websites. We've been working with a lot of companies lately on retainer basis because we can do more. The 7 of us can do more for you for less than the cost of 1 employee, because we can build your website, we can produce your podcast, we can create testimonial videos for your website. We can kind of be like the best employee that can actually do it. We're like a unicorn, except there's 7 of us, right? But we're less than the cost of a full-time employee. So a lot of people have been engaging us that way lately for 3 or 6 month sprints to kind of just clean up the whole
get some stuff done.
operation.
Yeah,
exactly. But really podcast production is our sweet spot. Strategy is my jam. So you really get me when you work with us. You get my 24 years of marketing experience to help you come up with a strategy. And then my team executes, and we do everything behind the curtain. So all you have to focus on is the interview and the amplification of your content, meaning following up with that person, nurturing the relationship, and moving it down the path.
I love it. I love it. So heartcastmedia.com, and I will attest. Molly has helped me out with some strategy related thinking relative to me, not even relative to podcast stuff. Like I was trying to do this brand, Try Life On, and just get this message out there to people that they can live. And Molly was one of the original people who was just helping me with the concept and to think through what it was going to be like. And also helping me understand I don't need to reach 1 million people. And I just don't give a fuck about it. What I want to do is reach like 100 and change their lives dramatically. I got this thing, and I hope this will resonate with people, and I know it'll resonate with you. My now stated goal for myself in life is when I die, a lot of people are really bothered by it. You know what I mean? Like right. the shop owner that I would help is really bothered when I was a street cop, or dude in the military in Africa that I would help out when I was a federal agent, or this Try Life On thing. If I can help 5 people make a shift like Molly, it doesn't have to be down where you are in Costa Rica. It could be down the street. It could be just a new lifestyle. It could be minimalizing their stuff. I want people to be really fucking when Maurice goes away. And some of the advice that you gave me from a strategy perspective and understanding its impact over volume, it was really helpful. So I'm grateful. And I finally got you on this joint.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. It's, I knew one day.
There's more stuff coming. I'll talk to you about that stuff in the side. But for now, sure. I really appreciate you. I miss you. I can't wait to see you down there, and trust that this brother's going to show up down there for sure.
I have no doubt, man. I have no doubt. Well, right. I'll look forward to that day.
No doubt. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Hey guys, this is Maurice, host of the Try Life On podcast, and thank you for listening to another episode. I hope you are finding it useful in helping you design your own lifestyle that you don't need a vacation from. If that's the case, please consider dropping a review for me, whether in Apple, iTunes, or in Spotify. Drop a review, put some stars on it, give me some feedback on how I can make the podcast better, what information you are looking for. I am doing my best to get information to you on the Try Life On principles, the 5 freedoms, how to build lifestyle, travel hacking, all of it. And I want to do it for you. So please do a review for me. And until next time, my name is Maurice Philogene, and this is the Try Life On podcast. Peace.